San Francisco.
All right, you guys, this is episode 45 of Inner Demons, and without further ado, I'm going to get straight to it. So check it out, you guys, real quick. Yesterday, as you guys know, I released episode 47 of Inner Demons. Now, it's been a couple weeks since I dropped an episode, and, I'm not going to waste too much time on this, but let me just say this. So I was going through the comments, and a couple of you made mention of the fact that, and you did it in a respectful way, and for that, I appreciate you guys. But, a couple of you said, hey, B, with all due respect, love the Inner Demons, and, it's I watch every episode, but, this last episode, you've told that story like 3 times already, and it was repetitive, and I get it, man. If you guys think back to the beginning of the video yesterday, I kind of mentioned that, that was probably going to happen, and that's completely my fault. When too much time elapses between videos, I lose my footing and I forget where I'm at. If a week or two goes by, I forget the last thing that I talked about, and usually I'll start back up and I'll talk about it again. I'll mention it again if it's not still on my mind, or if I don't remember what I talked about. That's what ends up happening when too much time goes by. Now, if I gotta record these videos and just stockpile them, sandbag them until Sandman is able to edit them, that's what I'm going to do, just for the sake of being consistent and so that this doesn't happen. Because I'm not trying to tell you guys the same story 3 and 4 times. Nobody wants to listen to that. And this is the reason why, if you guys notice that when certain things come up, I won't talk about it again, because I know I already covered it in a war story, in a past profile, or something like that. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. I commend those of you that, kept it respectful and let me know. And again, it's my fault. Let's hope that from here on, that we can keep it consistent, and, not too much time will lapse between videos so that this doesn't keep happening. Anyway, let me get straight back into this. So there's a couple things I want to say about Mendocino County Jail after I got busted. Now, well, before and after. So like I told you guys, I was out there for about a good 6 months. After I met that female, I ended up moving in with her, and, I would stay out there for about 6 months. She's the only reason why I stayed out there. If I didn't have an established regimen out there, a residence out there, I would have bounced. I didn't have no resources. I've said that 1,000 times, but I didn't. And, time was of the essence. Rock was waiting for, I had about a good month to get the ball rolling out there, to get everything up and running. And, I knew that he was waiting, and not just Rock, but leadership in general. Everybody, when you're out there and you're a regimental commander, they keep tabs on what you're doing out there, so I didn't waste no time. I got out there, didn't take really no R&R for myself. I just straight hit the streets out there and started doing my grunt work, especially after meeting Wormy. That's what helped open up a lot of doors. Now, let me say this. So unlike any other time when I would get out and I would break new ground in a new area, a new county, if I got paroled somewhere else, like I did when I went to Salinas, well, I didn't have to really do that much grunt work out there. Everything was already established. But like, when I would go out to Santa Rosa or Alameda or up by Daly City, wherever, if I had to break new ground, a lot of the times I had a blueprint that I used to follow, and it worked almost every time. But because Ukiah was a lot different, the Northerners up there, they were way behind. They weren't gamed up as far as street activities, the politics. A lot of them hadn't been to prison. So, I didn't have time to sit these guys down and educate them. Some of them were street savvy enough to where I could put them in pocket and I had them working for me, but I wasn't comfortable enough with sitting anybody down, telling them, hey, you're going to be functioning for an NF regiment. This is what you're getting involved in. And the money that, you know, the money that you guys are making out there on the streets selling this dope. This is NF dope. And this is going back to NF leadership. I didn't have to tell anybody that. All they knew was that they were slinging dope. I was providing them with the dope. We had we basically had a symbiotic relationship. It worked both ways, and that's it. A lot of the people that I was utilizing weren't even Norteños. A lot of them were white guys and American Indians. And again, all they were doing was slinging dope. That's all they were doing, was generating money. I was basically taking care of everything else. Now, Wormy was helping me. I appointed him as my second in command. He was the only one that knew that this was a regiment, that, you know, we were functioning in an actual regiment. So eventually, like I told you guys, the parole officers out there were on some dumb shit. They did not want me out there on the streets. They were trying to find any reason that they could to violate me and get me thrown back in prison. And I knew that, you know, like I said, they reached as far as trying to say I was representing my affiliations through the kids because they had red clothing. And because at one point, I gave them little Mongolians. They had little Mongolians. And this was something that I didn't think about doing myself. This was a style that was already out there in that area. Other little kids had the same, had little Mongolians. So, I knew that they were reaching, and I knew that they were trying to find any reason to get me off the streets, and eventually they did. So I would catch that case. Again, I'm not going to go through everything that happened up there. You guys already know about the stabbing incident and some of the other things that I would end up getting involved in out there. But eventually I'd end up going back to jail. Now, I ended up catching that case with the white guy, Robert, and I already talked about that, so we're not gonna get into that. But the crazy thing about it was, I told you guys when I first went to the county jail, the first time when me and him both got arrested, he took the case, and I hired an attorney for him. I bailed him out, did all that, and then he ended up flipping the script on me. He started telling on me, so I ended up having to hire me an attorney, and eventually, I went to prelim. They bound it over. Crazy, man. These people were really trying to give me a life case on a case like this, where you had somebody that was claiming the dope, that was dirty. I was clean. They had paraphernalia at their house. I didn't have none in mine, but they were still trying to pin this case on me. Anyway, so once that would end up falling through, I would end up beating it on a 995 motion, and that doesn't happen. That right there, I got lucky. I found a judge that had some nuts big enough to, follow the rule of law instead of trying to follow, play this little game that Parole was playing. Anyway, so, it was funny. Once I was in the county jail and, I beat the 995 motion, I had called. So let me back up real quick. So at one point, when I'm out there in Ukiah, Louis Roach ends up calling me up. Big Roach from Frisco. He ends up calling me up. He was my cellie in 94 in Pelican Bay. We were in C5 together. Calls me up. He's like, bro, I need to meet you. I got some important info that I need to put in your ear, and I got some other stuff that I need to hand deliver to you. So around this time, I had also been in contact with Mexican Mike. Rojo, I met Rojo in Quentin. He was just a little young ginger, little flat-chested kid. But, when I first met him and we started chopping it up, he's telling me he's from Pittsburgh, and, I'm kind of picking his brain as far as resources. And he's telling me that, he's in touch with a homie called Eminem, and, the homie's balling, and he could probably plug me in with them, and he'd probably assist me. So I get his info, and I would parole. This was a previous time. So when Roach calls me, at that same time, I'm in the process of meeting up with Mexican Mike, with Eminem. So the same day that Eminem's coming up, Big Roach is coming up. So they end up getting there to Ukiah around the same time. Now, when Roach gets there, he hands me a manila envelope and he basically tells me, stop communicating with Rock. We found out he's working for the feds. He's been communicating with them and he tells me exactly how they found out. I'm just going to tell you guys again, but you know, apparently Rock was communicating with the feds through mail. I don't know, he was writing down everything and that's how he was communicating with them. And apparently there was a Mexican mafia member in C2 with the same last name as Rock. Well, I think he had the first and last name, David Ramirez. So what ended up happening is one of Rock's letters got returned to sender. So when it was coming back, it got rerouted to the Mexican mafia member. He opens it up, obviously, starts reading it and was like, wow. So, you know, out of respect, even though, you know, Stork and those other brothers over there in C2 were opposition, even though we were considered to be enemies, still that right there is a moral thing. You know, it's a nobody that's active is going to be okay with somebody that's cooperating. But as far as that, we're all going to be on the same side. You know, what's right is right, what's wrong is wrong. In their eyes, you know, trash is trash. Cats that are active, whether or not your ops, it doesn't matter. If somebody's an informant, everybody that's active is gonna feel the same type of way about that individual. So he shot that letter to Stork, and that's how they pull Rock's covers. So Big Roach came up there and he said, stop communicating with them. Don't send nothing else to him. You know, he's been working with them. We're trying to find out how long. And, you know, that was pretty much that. It blew my mind. This was somebody that was a captain, a seated captain. You know, I can't say it really blew my mind. I was surprised, but, you know, nothing really blew my mind because I had seen a lot of people over the years higher than Rock, Big Chante, Arroyo, and some other C's lay it down. So it didn't really surprise me like that. It was just, I never seen it coming. Anyway, so I get the manila envelope and it's 1,000 kites in that motherfucker, man. There's all kinds of directives and, you know, new protocol, new filters that are coming out, everything that I needed to be updated. And it was coming from Conejo. Conejo wanted him to hand deliver that envelope to me and they wanted me to go through it. It was a shitload of kites. So what I did was being on parole, you know, I knew that if they came in the house that they could go in the common areas, they could go in the bedrooms, in the kitchen, in the living room. And so what I did was the female I was living with, I told her to give it to her mother and to have her mom put it somewhere in her room. And I put a lock on her door just for that purpose, just to you know, so that I could secure my stuff in her room. As long as she had a lock on her door and it wasn't considered a common area of the house, it was off limits for parole. That's how it was supposed to be. So I give her the envelope, tell her to put it away, and I'm gonna read it later. It was too much stuff. You know, I'd started to go through some of it like later on that night and the next day, but it was a big couple big bundles of just a lot of stuff. Anyway, so around 2 days later, something would end up happening. But let me just say this first. So around that time, I started getting my addiction was something that I always continued to struggle with. I knew that, you know, the chances of me going back to prison were probably good at that time. I just felt the walls closing in on me again. And even though I was out and Parole had let me out, I just felt like, you know, these guys were trying everything that they could to put me back in custody. So, you know, it stressed me out. Though that was a trigger that ended up, you know, I ended up using again. And once again, you know, my resources at that time, and it's okay to talk about it now because they're gone. But, you know, the only people that I knew that used that shit at that time was my family. And, you know, I got at them and I told them that I needed something and they got it to me. So, you know, they would continue to be a source of that for a while, even though they didn't agree with it. And a lot of times I get out of prison, they want me not to mess around. You're doing good. Why you want to go back to that? And still, at the end of the day, you know, I made the decisions, and you know they didn't deny me. So anyway, so after they let me out of the county jail after I won that 995, because you know I called the parole officer when I was still in the county jail, the supervisor, and I'm like, look, man, when they okay, let me back up. So after I got those that manila envelope with all those kites, that's when I would end up catching the case. So when I caught the case, that's when they searched the house I was living at, and they searched the other guy that I got arrested with. They just did that. We caught the case together. So they searched his house for paraphernalia and they searched mine for paraphernalia. They didn't find no paraphernalia, but what they did, and this was a task force, they didn't just search the area that, you know, the room I was living in and the common areas of the house. They went into her mom's room with the lock on the door. They didn't care. The female that I was living with, she even told them, you guys can't go in there. She's got a lock on her door, whoop, whoop, whoop. And they were like, lady, shut up. You know, we're going to search wherever we want to search. So they went up in there. Didn't matter that they violated, you know, search and seizure laws, but they still did. They went up in there. They found the envelope. So when I'm in the county jail, you know, at one point I end up calling home to this female, and she's like, listen to me, you need to listen. And at this point, you know, I'm thinking the case is cool. I won you know, I don't think I had won the 995 motion yet, but the case was going cool. You know, dude it originally copped to it, and you know, everything came back that looked like, you know, I was in the clear. Well, when I call her this day, she's like, you need to listen to me. She was like, check it out. Remember when your boy came up in that red truck? And I'm like, first, I'm not remembering. It's not catching. I'm thinking, okay, Roach. Yeah, okay, yeah. What's up? And she was like, okay, you remember he gave you, she said something crazy, like some microcosms, some shit, like micro small powder or something. So I'm thinking like, okay, she was like, well, they found it. They found a little bit, or they found it. And I'm like, fuck's she talking about? What do you mean, like on a desk or something? The way she made it sound like is like they found a little bit of dope on a dresser or on a mirror or something somewhere. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Nobody even had nothing. How's that even possible? She goes, no, you're not listening. She was like, they went into my mom's room, and I'm like, oh, that's when it clicked. So how do they do that? And she's like, she told me. And I'm like, wow. So, you know, my whole thing at that point was to try to account for it. I couldn't deny it because you know, she couldn't cop to it. The female, her mom couldn't cop to it. How the hell? Why would they be in possession of something like that? It's obvious. So my whole thing was to call the parole officer because it looked like I was going to beat the case and maybe there was a possibility of me getting out. I was just going to say, you know what? Hey, this was from the last time I paroled. This is some stale shit. That's what I was going to try to do. So I call him up and I tell him, I need to talk to you, man. Can you come up to the county jail so that, you know, I can talk to you? And like I said, I was just going to tell him, look, the last time I got out of prison, you know, I brought that with me. I put it up and I forgot about it. And that's why I was there. However, before I even had a chance to say anything, he came up to the county jail, the supervisor, Jerry Cardoza, and he's like, look, we don't even need to talk about it. I'm cutting you loose. You know, they don't have a case on you. Obviously, your co-defendant took the case. You know, you're clean. There's no reason for us to violate you. And I was just like, I was stunned. So I don't say nothing. I'm just like, Hey man, I appreciate you being straight up, man. You know what I mean? I don't never catch breaks like that, but you know, it was what it was. So I get out that night. You know, little did I know at the time that was just a tactic. It was a ploy. It was a way for them to just give me some more rope so that they could reel me in. The Operation Black Widow, the investigators, they got their hands on those kites, no doubt. But what they wanted to do is they wanted them to let me out so that, you know, I could get caught up. They didn't have a strong enough case to hit me with the conspiracy yet, or to really get me on anything to bring me in as a defendant in that case, or as a defendant in that indictment. Now they had me as a co-conspirator later on because they still weren't able to get that final whatever they needed to make it, you know, to get a case to stick on me. So anyway, I'm thinking like, what, you know, when the parole officer leaves, though, I'm thinking like, what are they up to though, man? You know, they found the paperwork. I know they found it, and I know parole knew about it. Because when the cops went in there in her mom's room and they found that envelope, I asked her, what did they say? And she said that one of the guys from the task force said, you see this envelope? This right here is gonna get him life in prison. This right here is gonna get him caught up. This is bad news right here. He was flapping the envelope around, right? So parole was there. I knew that they had knowledge of that. So I'm like, why ain't they mentioning it? Why they're up to, there's some secret squirrel shit going on, right? So it dawned on me that okay, they're trying to set me up. That's what they're doing. They're giving me some rope to hang myself. So, you know, I called a couple of homies. I called Roach. I let him know, hey man, you know, it's probably not a good idea to come up for a while. I'm hot right now. I know these guys are watching me. This is what's on. I run it all down to them and whatnot. And that's, you know, that's basically what happened at that point. Now, around 2 days after they let me out, I get up one morning and the female that I'm living with, she's getting ready to go to work. She's working at a casino. She gets up, she's getting ready. I had took the dope out, I had it sitting on top of a dresser. So she came out, she's getting ready, putting on her makeup, and she sees it on the dresser. You know, she's seen what I was doing. And we had 3 little dogs. My mom's, she couldn't take care of her dogs, so I ended up taking them. So we had them. And, you know, I went to walk them. It was early in the morning and I needed to let them out. So I just leashed them up real quick and walked out. Now, when I walked out, I'm in front, just walking like not even 80 feet from the front door. She comes out, she gets in the car, she's like, all right, she's like, I'm going to work. I'll be back later on tonight. You need anything? Whoa, 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 right? So she drives off. Now I'm still out there walking the dogs, and all of a sudden I see 4 cars come in the little street that we were living on. I see them come in, and I look over and I see 3 more cars come from this side, from the other side. And it's parole. It's some parole officers, and it's they got some cops with them. So where I was at, there's no way I could have made it. It didn't even dawn on me, you know, right away that there's dope out right there on the dresser. But as I'm watching these guys come down the street, I look up and I see the female. She comes flying in. She literally like drove past them fools doing like 60 on a like a little 25-mile-per-hour zone street, and she comes flying up, like she comes flying up so fast, man. Fucking, she brought a whole cloud of dust with her. She pulls up, jumped out. She did a 50-yard dash to the front door. Meanwhile, parole pulls up. They try to run and catch her. I hear her put the key in the lock. Boom, she opens up the door, and as soon as they run up and grab the door, she slammed it and locked it. And they're beating on the door. Open up the fucking door. And she's like, I got my kids in there. She's in there flushing the dope. I salute her for that. You know, this girl wasn't street savvy, real street savvy. She hadn't been around none of that kind of stuff until I brought it around her. But she had the sense of mind like a trooper to go in there, and she thought about it. Like she she wasn't no dumb female. She was like, you know what? These motherfuckers are trying to do a sneak attack on them. I remember seeing that on the dresser. So I talked to her later and she told me, she was like, yeah, you know, when I was driving off, I'm thinking, fuck, I seen it on the dresser. I seen what they were doing. I talked to them when they were pulling in. I'm like, who you going to see? And they were like, oh, we're going to see somebody else. And she's like, no, you're not. There was nobody else on parole right there. So they were just trying to be sneaky. Anyway, when I was out in front, though, I had like a couple grams. I had it in my hand. I threw them under a car. They didn't find that, but I'm gonna tell you guys what ended up happening to that right there. So they end up coming up. She gets the dogs. They cuff me up, and basically parole's like, you know what, we gotta take you back and put you in custody. The district attorney's pissed off because we let you go, and I'm like, how does that even work, man? You guys are parole, and you're gonna let the district attorney dictate how you guys do your job. So because the district attorney's pissed off that I'm out on the streets because they don't got a case, you guys are gonna lock me up just to appease the. That's some bullshit, man. That's some straight bullshit what you guys are doing. But they're gonna do what they're gonna do. I'm in no position, to do nothing about it. So they cuff me up. They take me to county jail. I'm back in now, and the case is gonna get dumped. But I'm back in, and that's where I'll stay until the case gets dumped. Until I go through San Quentin and I do my parole violation. But the dope I threw outside in the parking lot, so trip out. This is how behind Mendocino County is and their county jail. So I tell the female later on that day, hey, I call her up and I'm like, walk outside, go over there by the, where the laundry room's at. There's a car that was parked right there. Look up under there. There should be something. You should see it. So she went out there. I'm on the phone with her. After fumbling around a little bit, she finds it. Boom. She goes, I got it. I know what you're talking about. I got it. Right. So tell her, I tell her to bring it in the kitchen. I sit her down. I'm like, look, I'm thinking of a way to get it in the jail. And this is something that I've always been like I've always been real creative at getting that stuff in, whether it was through, I had help through a CO that's been compromised, or finding somewhere in the jail that where they lapse security somehow, a hole in the window, a spot that the trustee might have access to. I've always been good at finding those loopholes. Anyway, so at that time, I noticed that they allowed magazines and stuff to come in. And I was like, the only way I'm going to be able to do this is through the mail. But lacing her up and her not really being that, versed in how to do it, all I had her do is I told her to take it, flatten it out, put it on a piece of writing paper, take some white out, and fucking paint over that shit. Sloppy, hella sloppy. She painted the white out over it, and then I told her, let it dry and write a letter. Just write a letter over it and see what happens. So 2 days go by, she mails it. 2 days go by, it's the day that it should get there. And when they do mail call, they just so happen to have a rookie that's working that day. He's passing out mail and he calls my name. But when I'm watching him, the way that he's processing them, all he's doing is he's taking the letter out of the envelope. He fans it out. He gives it to, the recipient, to whoever the letter belongs to, and then he'll hand him the envelope, after tearing off the stamp. So I'm like, I should be good, right? So he gets to me, calls my name. He opens up the letter. It was like 6 pages because she had to, it was a big chunk, and she couldn't put it all on one page. So she did it on like 6 pages. So this guy's a rookie, but he starts fanning the letter out and he sees the white out. So what he does is he's got those white latex gloves on. He grabs a chunk of that shit that's stuck to the paper, white out and everything, pulls it off, and is like, the fuck? And throws it on the table. he threw it on the table, and I'm watching a couple cats that were standing right there that they knew what I was doing. They were trying to help me. I see one, he slaps a chunk of it off on the floor, and he gets it and he walks off. And he gets that one piece. And then this guy turns the next page, he tears another chunk off, and he don't even tear it all off. He just takes a piece of it, and he keeps doing that. And there's like pieces all over the table, and people are fucking putting their hands in, they're grabbing it. I get it all back from all these guys, but eventually he hands me the letter, and it's still got big chunks stuck on there. He finishes with the rest of the mail, but while he's finishing the rest of the mail, I'm in the back peeling the rest of this shit off, putting it, packaging it up, and securing it. Sure enough, 5 minutes later, after he walked out, a couple COs came running in, and they're like, "Mendoza, come here." And I'm like, "What's up, man?" And they're like, "Where's that letter?" I said, "That letter's gone." It's like, "Man, why?" And they were like, "You know why? That letter had black tar heroin in it." I said, "Man, look, I don't know who's trying to set me up, but when I seen what was on that letter, I flushed that shit. That shit's gone, man. You go search my cell, tear up this block, do what you got to do. It's gone. I don't know, somebody's trying to set me up, but man, if I'm going to do something, I'm not going to be that sloppy." That was pretty obvious. And they bit. They bit. They sucked that up. They're like, "Yeah, you know what? It was pretty obvious." I couldn't believe, like, dude took a couple chunks out there with him and left a lot behind and left a lot on the letter. But anyway, so that's just something funny that happened. Now, the other thing that was significant that happened while I was still in the jail before the case would get dropped and I get kicked out to Quentin, I get shipped off to Quentin is, so at one point I get called out for an attorney visit. I'm playing pinochle, and I go out to the attorney room, and there's two cats. One's got a little short Mexican cat with a big whip, and the other cat's just a white dude, probably around mid-30s. And the Mexican dude's probably like in his 40s. So when I walk in, I'm like, "Who you guys?" And they're like, "What's up, boxer?" And they're like, "Hey, man, hey, we just want to have a word with you." So I'm like, "Who you guys with?" And the Mexican dude says, "We're with the FBI." And they go, "Just listen." He said, "Just listen, man." So I don't even sit down. I stand by the door, and these guys were playing a cold game. So they had a file folder on the desk, and I could clearly see on the flap, it had my name written on it, John Boxer Mendoza. So they start playing this little game amongst each other. They're like, "Hey," so they look at each other and they're talking. They're like, "Say, so we're basically here to relay a message to you, man, that, we got some credible information basically saying that you're in trouble and that the fellas are going to hit you." So I look and I start laughing, man. I'm like, "No, they're not, man. You guys really think that I'm gonna fall for that?" And even if that was the case, if there's something going on, it's familiar business. I'll deal with it when I get to Quinn. But I'm not gonna bite into that, man. You know what I'm saying? And they're like, "Look, man, you might want to think." Then they shift gears and tell me, "You might want to think about helping yourself, man, because there's something that's in the works right now that a lot of people are gonna end up getting buried, man." So I'm listening to him and I'm watching him. The Mexican dude opens up the file folder, and I can see it's all my letters that I had written to, like Conejo, Big Rock. I see a stack of them, but they were photocopied. It wasn't the actual letter, but they were photocopied, and I seen yellow highlighting where they were trying to decipher codes. So they open it up and they're like, "So who's Colleen?" And at first it didn't dawn on me who they were talking about, but Colleen was the name of the female that I was living with. It was her mom. So I'm like, "It's such and such's mother, why?" And they're like, "Why are you using her name to write your letters?" And I was like, "Man, I got nothing else to say to you guys, man." You know what I'm saying? They're like, "Hey, so hey, last thing, so what, are you fighting a new case?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fighting a case, but it's gonna get dumped." And they're like, okay, yeah, well, we'll definitely be seeing you again. You know, like they were just, their whole thing was trying to spook me. But the one thing that it validated was that the feds were on me. And now this was pre-Operation Black Widow. This is before the indictment hit. So I knew the feds were on me, but I didn't know that it was in regards to this massive federal investigation that had been going on for 5 years. So anyway, I kept that in mind. And, you know, after the case would get dumped on a 995, I get shot to Quentin. I get to Quentin, I'd run into some other individuals, and the feds were making their rounds, even coming to Quentin, pulling cats out over there. I remember they pulled out Nick Oya from Frisco. They tried to run an okey doke on him. They pulled out Listo, Jason Bachmeyer from Santa Rosa. And there was a couple other individuals. And we basically just, again, it validated in our minds that we were hot and that we knew that we were being looked at. You know, I at that point had basically took it to the level of I'm gonna get indicted. I know I'm gonna get indicted. You know, so anyway, because the feds they don't waste their time coming up to see you or to try to play those kind of games unless they're starting to build a case on you or they know something. So anyway, I get to Quentin, and around this time, old Fleabag Lenchel's over there, and this is when the situation would end up happening with him and the tobacco, and some other situations would end up happening. But the one significant thing that I'll talk about that happened over there in Quentin at this time was I ended up getting a filter from Corny and Pinky and Skip and the other brothers that were over there in Santa Rita at that time. And they basically told me that when, if I end up in Corcoran, that they needed Carlitos stripped. They wanted him stripped. This was at the very beginning of the power struggle. They had just left. The brothers up in the Bay were all pissed off because they took the banks. They had control. These guys in Santa Rita had control over all the money. These guys felt like they were left high and dry up there in the Bay. And at that time, there was just a lot of back and forth. This is leadership. No, this is HQ right here. This has always been H. No, we're the righteous leaders. So there was just a lot of posturing going on at that time. But they did tell me that Carlitos needed to be stripped because he was falling in line with the brothers up in the Bay. So coincidentally, I would end up getting put on a bus to Corcoran, and my directives were straightforward. I was given a straightforward directive that Carlitos was to be stripped. And basically, they said that if he did not comply and did not step down from his position to do whatever I needed to do, even if it had to, even if I had to go as far as being physical, they basically laid it out. So, I was hoping that it wouldn't come to that. I had always had a lot of respect for Carlitos. Even before I knew him, I'd always heard a lot of good things about him. But, I had ended up having the honors of going to Corcoran and having to deal with that issue. Now, let me just get into a little bit of it before I close this up. This one's going to be short, you guys, but, keep in mind, Carlitos had been the regimental commander for Corcoran. He'd been in the SHU for a while. I want to say it was pretty close to 10 years. Now, Sombras was over there. You had Pancho from Salinas. There was a lot of C's that were over there that were firmly behind him. Plus, then he had his primo that was over there with him, little Chihuahua, like a little puppy. Chilo was over there with him. And, all these guys were firmly behind Carlitos. And a lot of them were pushing for Pelican Bay. A lot of these guys were openly talking bad about Corny and Pinky and all these guys. So I went over there. I was like the outcast, straight up. When I went to Yard, I got eyeballs from everywhere. Because as soon as I got to Corcoran, I ended up in the same pod with Carlitos. Luckily, coincidentally, I ended up in the same pod with him. His primo was on the tier a couple doors down from me. Carlitos was on the right. No, he was on the left. Chilo was a couple cells down on the right. It couldn't have been couldn't have been any more convenient than that. But as soon as I got there and, we went through the NA stuff, the new arrival stuff, so that I could get cleared, I moved to the order of business, which was dialoguing back and forth with Carlitos about the situation that, these brothers wanted him stripped. And, I knew that it was a delicate situation. I knew that I couldn't go in there and be too aggressive. Otherwise, I was going to create a war. I wasn't going to go in there and, kiss nobody's ass either. I was going to go in there in a business type of fashion and basically let them know, look, brother, this is the directives that I got. This is what they're asking you. They want you to step down. And look, bro, as well as I do, you've been around for a while. If the reasons why they're stripping you, if it's not justified, as well as I do that it'll get straightened out. Everything will get ironed out. But there's a lot of stuff going on right now because of this new indictment that came out. So look, all I can do is pass this directive on to you. They're telling you to step down, bro, and they want me to appoint another RC. So, we're going back and forth, and Carlitos was, he was a soldier. He didn't create no waves. He didn't, resist. He basically just wanted to know why, and that was that. So, it really wasn't it wasn't a situation between me and him. It didn't get complicated, because of Carlitos. It got complicated because of all the other C's that were there in Corcoran. So, he was like, hey, this is what they want. This is, I got no problem with complying, and that's what I'm going to do. Now, his little primo ends up finding out about what, I've been directed to go to Corcoran and do, basically. And, he starts bumping his gums. Chilo starts bumping his gums. He shoots me a kite and he's like, I don't know who you think you are coming up in here, telling my primo to step down, but, and this regiment and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, check this out, bro. I don't know who the fuck you are. I don't know you. Don't want to know you. Never met you. I'm glad I never have. But look, if you got a fucking problem, bro, you know what I'm saying? You can move in my cell and you can get at me about it. But, pumping your chest, beating on your chest through this kite, you ain't saying shit, bro. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to send you this gunner back so you can wipe your ass with it. Don't ever get at me like that. And, before I sent it back to him, I told Carlitos, I want you to check this out, bro, but send it back to me because I want to send it back to your primo. And Carlitos got it, looked at it, and he yelled on the tier, Chilo, hey, what the fuck are you doing, man? He's like, hey, check this out, brother. For the last couple hours, I've been dialoguing back and forth with this brother. It's not about that, bro. You know what I'm saying? And, all that disrespect, hey, homeboy, you're fucking wrong. You know what I'm saying? He's like, you don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're talking about, man. Keep your fucking nose to yourself over there. You know what I'm saying? So he checked the shit out of him. But still, I wasn't famous over there in Corcoran. Sombras, it was the same thing. I had to tell him, bro, quit acting like you're somebody, man. You know what I'm saying? Quit acting like you're a pool butt, bro. You know what I'm saying? Which you got a tier security job over here. Now you think you're somebody, man. There was a lot of and I didn't want to go over there and do that, but I was catching a lot of flack from a lot of these C's that didn't want Carlito stripped. For whatever reason, they had personal ties with him. Maybe it affected their positions or something. I don't know, but he complied, man, and he made it easy for me. So he stepped down, and I appointed Mono from Oakland to, take over the RC position. Once I finished doing that, I sent a filter up to Santa Rita, basically letting, Corny, Pinky, Skip, Tibbs, letting them brothers know that homeboy complied. I stripped him. He's no longer in the RC position, and that I appointed Mono from Oakland to take over the RC position. So that was something that happened. There's a lot more to it than just that. There was a lot of tension and a lot of other little ins and outs that I'm not going to get into that happened over there. But just trust me, I was catching a lot of flack from a lot of these other C's. Lightweight caused, a small war over there, in Corcoran. But Carlitos ended up being the one that was diffusing all that stuff. Anyway, so I would end up paroling at that time back out to, I want to say I went back out to Mendocino County for real quick for like another month. And then I ended up catching another violation for, I want to say I caught a DUI out there. I want to say that was the time that I went back on that. But, this time when I went back to San Quentin, I would run into Caja was there, and this was around the beginning of 99 now, or this was around 2000. So we're around 2000, mid 2000, when I'm going to close this up for right now because I want to get this out to you guys. And again, the reason why I jumped straight back on this today is so that, I don't go back and talk about a lot of the stuff that I already talked about in episode 44, 45. I want to keep it kind of fresh so that I can keep this going and keep the sequence going from 97 basically on up until I got arrested. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Again, I know I sound like a broken record, but I'm going to try to be more consistent with these videos, with the inner demons and the war stories. Also, I'm going to be breaking out or rolling out that new series this week on the federal prisons, federal and state prisons. I'm doing a breakdown on Beaumont, Bloody Beaumont. That's going to be the first federal prison that I do a profile on. I'm still going to continue to do the hip hop hot seat. However, I'm going to do that here and there. Like I said, there's a lot of you that really weren't into those videos, and that's okay. So I'm going to get back to doing what I do, what works for me. And, I'll continue to do that since there is some of you that were starting to like that series as well. So just bear with me. We'll get back to where we were, you guys, man. So, a lot of you guys, my day oneers that have been with me for a while, man, you guys have hung with me, up until this point. We're going to keep slugging it out. Anyway, this is your boy B. This episode 45, and I'm out.